I keep two clocks in my head every shift, the one on the wall and the one in my chest that starts ticking faster around midnight, right when the dispatch traffic usually gets quiet enough for his voice to come through clean. Rescue 9, be advised, the driveway floods at that address after rain. Park on the street and walk in. A short pause, the kind that always made me picture him leaning back in his chair, double-checking his own words before he let them go. Tell your partner boots, not sneakers. That was Ezra. I'd never seen him, not once, not in 4 months of shifts that overlapped just enough for his voice to land in my ear at the exact moment mine needed steadying. My partner, Foster, used to tease me about it, the way I'd go quiet whenever a call came through with that particular cadence, unhurried, low, like he had all the patience in the world stitched into his throat. You've got a crush on a radio, Foster said once, grinning around a mouthful of vending machine crackers. I don't even know what he looks like, I said, which was true, and which didn't stop anything. My name's Adaeze Okafor, 26, paramedic out of Station 9 on the east side, a stretch of the county where the streets don't always match the map and half the porch lights have been busted since somebody's grandmother was still paying the electric bill. I'd been doing this 3 years, long enough to know that the job strips away most of your illusions about romance pretty quick. You don't get candlelight. You get fluorescent bays and cold coffee and a radio that crackles with somebody else's worst night. But somewhere in there, Ezra's voice had become the one steady thing, a hand on the small of my back guiding me through doors I couldn't see yet. It started small. A warning about black ice on a call in February. A note that the address had 2 pit bulls, friendly but big enough to knock you down out of excitement. Little kindnesses laid into the bones of his instructions, the kind you'd only notice if you were listening for more than the facts. And I was. God help me, I was. You ever wonder if it's weird? I asked Foster one slow night, both of us parked in the ambulance bay, watching moths throw themselves at the security light, caring about someone you've never actually met? He shrugged. My aunt married a guy she talked to on a CB radio for 2 years before she ever shook his hand. Said by the time she met him in person, she already knew him better than most people she'd dated. That's insane. That's love, maybe. Or insane. Sometimes those overlap. I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't, honestly. I think about it sometimes, whether you can really know a person from the careful way they choose their words when someone else's life is falling apart in real time. Whether the version of a person who shows up for you in a crisis is more real than the version you'd get over dinner, all performance and best angles. I lean toward yes. I know some of you would say no, that voices are easy, that anyone can sound good when the stakes are somebody else's stairwell and not their own heart. Maybe you're right. I only know what it did to me. By June, I'd started keeping a mental log of him, the way you'd count constellations. He never used slang, never lost his patience, even when a caller was screaming so loud you could hear it bleed through the radio. And once, only once, his voice cracked at the tail end of a call, some infant welfare check that went sideways before we even got wheels rolling. He came back on 30 seconds later, steady again, like he'd shoved the crack down somewhere private and locked the door on it. I thought about that for days. Wondered what it cost him to sound so calm all the time. I asked dispatch supervisor Marisol once, casual as I could manage, who worked the graveyard board on Ezra's call sign. She gave me a look over her readers that told me I hadn't been half as subtle as I thought. Ostrowski, she said. Ezra Ostrowski. 6 years on the board, used to run ambulances himself before a knee injury took him off the trucks. Good man. Quiet. Doesn't date anybody in the department, if that's what you're circling around asking. I wasn't asking that. Sure you weren't. I went home that night and sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside, running his name through my head like a stone I was smoothing with my thumb. Ezra Ostrowski. It fit the voice. I don't know how, but it did. The thing about waiting for a voice, though, is that it can't hold you the way an actual hand can. Somewhere around August, I started feeling foolish about it, the way you feel foolish loving a song too much, playing it until it stops meaning anything and starts just meaning you're lonely. I nearly asked Foster to stop bringing it up. I nearly asked myself to stop caring. Neither of those things worked. Then came the night that changed the shape of it. We got the call at 2:40 in the morning, A residential fire, 2 streets over from the station, smoke inhalation, at least 1 resident unaccounted for. Ezra's voice came through the radio steadier than I'd ever heard it, walking us through a route change because the main road was already blocked by engine trucks. Rescue 9, cut through the alley behind 4th. It's tight, but it's clear. Watch the dumpster on your left. It's closer to the wall than it looks. We made the turn. The dumpster was exactly where he said. We got there 90 seconds faster than we would have otherwise, and those 90 seconds mattered, the way they always do in this job, more than any of us like to admit out loud. Afterward, hands still shaking a little from the adrenaline bleed off, I keyed the radio before I could stop myself. Rescue 9 to dispatch. Good call on the alley. Appreciate it. A pause. Longer than his usual pause. Copy that, Okafor. Glad you're both all right. He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. It's on every transmission. But hearing him say it, my actual name, not just my unit number, undid something in me I hadn't realized was wound so tight. I didn't sleep that day. I lay in bed running the sound of it over and over, Okafor, like he'd been saving it for the right moment to use. 3 weeks later, the department held its quarterly safety debrief, the kind of mandatory meeting where half the room is asleep by the second slide and the other half is scrolling their phones under the table. I almost skipped it. Foster physically shoved a coffee into my hand and told me I looked like a ghost and needed to sit somewhere with air conditioning for once. The dispatch staff sat in on those meetings too, a detail I'd somehow never registered in 3 years of showing up bleary-eyed and half-listening. A man walked in a few minutes late, favoring his left leg slightly. The kind of limp you'd only notice if you were trained to notice things like that. Broad through the shoulders, dark hair going grey a little early at the temples, glasses pushed up on his head like he'd forgotten they were there. He took the seat 2 rows up, and when the safety officer called on him for the dispatch protocol update, he stood, cleared his throat, and started talking. I knew the voice before I processed a single word of what he was saying. My whole body went still, the specific stillness of hearing something impossible confirmed. Ezra Ostrowski, in the flesh, standing at the front of a conference room in a wrinkled button-down, talking about response time protocols in that same unhurried cadence that had walked me through 100 worst nights of other people's lives. I don't remember what he said. I remember Foster elbowing me so hard I nearly spilled my coffee, whispering, "That's him, isn't it? Oh my God, that's him," loud enough that the woman in front of us turned around. After the meeting broke, I sat frozen in my chair while the room emptied, trying to figure out what you're even supposed to do with a year of feeling wound around a person who has no idea you exist, no idea you spent 100 nights waiting for 11 seconds of his voice like it was the only weather report that mattered. Do you say something? Do you let it stay a private thing? Safer that way? Undisturbed? I've turned that question over a lot since, whether the honest move is to speak or to protect what you've built in your own head, because sometimes the real version of a person can't survive contact with the one you imagined. I still don't know the right answer. Maybe there isn't one, universally. Maybe it depends entirely on the 2 people involved. I chose to speak, in the end, mostly because Foster was still standing there, vibrating with the sheer unbearable suspense of it. I caught Ezra by the coffee station, of all places, the same burnt vending machine coffee I'd been drinking through 100 graveyard shifts of missing him without a face to put to it. "Ezra Ostrowski," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "Adaeze Okafor. Rescue 9. Something shifted across his face, recognition arriving in stages. "The alley call," he said slowly. "Structure fire on 4th. That's me." "You sound different than I pictured," he said, and then looked faintly embarrassed to have admitted picturing me at all. "So do you," I said. "I mean, you sound the same. You just also have a whole rest of a person attached now." He laughed, a real laugh, warmer even than the version I'd built up over a year of radio traffic, and something in my chest loosened like a fist finally unclenching after being closed too long. "I used to run trucks," he said, nodding toward his leg without quite looking at it. "Knee gave out on a call 4 years back. Dispatch was supposed to be temporary." "I'm glad it wasn't," I said, and meant it more than the words could really carry. We talked for 11 minutes by the conference room clock, which felt both like nothing and like the fullest 11 minutes of my whole year, and at the end of it he asked, almost shy, nothing like the calm authority of his radio voice, whether I'd want to get coffee sometime that wasn't burnt and free and standing up. I said yes before he'd even finished the sentence. We've been dating 5 months now. He still works the board most nights I'm on the truck, and I'll admit there's something strange and lovely about hearing him walk some other unit through black ice or a busted mailbox, knowing that same careful voice once carried me home 100 times before I ever knew what he looked like, and knowing now exactly what his hands look like wrapped around a coffee mug at my kitchen table on the mornings. We both get off shift at the same hour, half asleep and grinning like idiots at each other. Over eggs, neither of us has the energy to actually cook. Sometimes I think about all those months I spent falling for a voice with no face on it, and I wonder if I'd tell a friend in the same spot to be careful, that you can't really love a sound, that you're loving the story you built around it. And maybe that's true, sometimes. But I've thought about it a long time now, turned it every which way, and I keep landing in the same place. Some people show you who they really are exactly when it costs them the most to hold it together, on the worst night of somebody else's life, steady and unhurried, no audience, nothing to gain. I don't think that's a story you build. I think that's just the truth, arriving early, in 11 seconds of static, long before you ever learn a name to put on it.